I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Coaching Questions Show on the Coaching Conversations podcast with Jim Knight. This show is for anyone who calls the Instructional Coaching Group home for all your instructional coaching content. These episodes are designed for everyone who desires to think and learn alongside Jim and myself as you continue to make an impact with all the great work you do. I'm Jessica Wise, a proud member of our ICG consultant team. In today's episode, we explore a topic that sparks a lot of curiosity in our workshop: leaders as instructional coaches. Once our Q&A has come to a close, we'll have an epilogue or a final note at the end of the show with 2 questions to wrap up our discussion before we sign off. So, on with the show. Hi, Jim.
Jessica, how nice to see you.
Nice to see you. How are you this nice Friday afternoon?
I'm doing fine. Today is a reboot day. I've been traveling quite a bit, so I was in Lake County, and then I was in California. Then I was in Napa in California for a meeting. Since I was there, I went there, and then I went to Georgia. I was in Athens for a couple days, not too far from you. I actually thought about taking a quick zip down to say hi, but it didn't happen. And had a great time at a conference in Georgia, and now I'm home. And then tomorrow I go to Nebraska. So it's been pretty hectic, but it's good. It's good to be here. What's up with you? What are you excited about right now, Jessica Wise? What's got you? What's lighting you up?
Coaching softball.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
How's your team doing? What's the record?
We have 1 win and 2 losses so far.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. So
But
you could go to 500 with the next win.
But we are having a great time. It's a new experience for my husband and I to do together, and also coaching one of our daughters, which is a lot of fun. But not being a teacher and not being in a classroom anymore, I miss children. So this has just been so energizing to be around kids again and to just see how silly they are and to also see how hard they work on the field. It's bringing me a lot of joy.
How old are these are your kids?
10.
10. Wonderful.
Yeah.
That sounds perfect. And
Yeah.
of course, there'll be a well-oiled machine by the end of the season. You know, you'll be the Nick Saban of softball, 10-year-old softball
That's right.
players.
Expect to see my name on the news soon.
That's good.
So
How does it ruin your marriage with your husband to be taught coaching together, or has it been fun, or how's that working out?
it's been a lot of fun. What nearly ruined us was wallpaper. So this has
Ah,
been a walk in the park. Well, putting wallpaper in a bathroom was a real test of our marriage.
mm, yeah.
But this is great. He does this with high school baseball, so it's been really fun to watch him shine as a coach. He's our head coach, I'm the assistant coach. But no, it's been really fun.
Well, and it's fun to coach your kids. So that's
Yes. Oh my goodness. And Jim, you're just almost a month out from your big trek. How are you feeling about it?
let's see, what's today? The 26th of September? I mean, this is gonna be posted later, but yeah, I'm feeling anxious, like a bit, I guess, would be the word that comes to mind. You know, I'm not in the shape I'd hoped I'd be in, but I'm super excited, and I'm just holding back a bit on getting in shape so that Christian can feel good about how out of shape he is. I want to make sure he feels a little better. He's younger, you know, so but it'll be amazing. You know, with TLC happening before that, and then we have an institute right after TLC. So there's a lot of things in my mind. I haven't really totally focused on it. And then Nepal just was politically in chaos for a while. So I'm like, I'm not even sure if we're going to go. But now it seems to have righted itself. And our contact in Nepal tells us everything's good. So we'll see.
It's very exciting. Can't wait to follow your journey together.
Right. It'll all be posted on Coach on a Motorcycle on Instagram. So
Yes. So
Christian will be keeping the world informed. The few people who want to know, they'll know.
I think a lot of people will want to know. I'm one of them. Well, Jim, I'm excited to talk about leaders as instructional coaches today. I have a lot of questions for you. The first one is maybe the most important. Why should we even talk about this topic of leaders as instructional coaches?
Well, I think principals are being asked to be instructional coaches, and and the trouble is if they don't have some kind of support and preparation and professional development, they could actually do damage in the way they work with other people. So I think helping principals learn exactly what they can do, and so that what they do doesn't diminish motivation, but actually increases motivation. And then the thing we're talking about, fast track coaching, which is what principals do, could also be used with coaches in some circumstances where they don't have time, when they have a lot of people to work with. They have to get a short period of time and move forward. But I think at the same time, you have to be aware of quick fixes as you do this thing. You don't want to just do a quick fix. You have to have a student focused goal, and you have to hit the student focused goals and evidence of the fact that it's working. And if you're not setting and hitting quick student focused goals, I'm not sure it's going to succeed. So I'd say it's really important. Leaders have to coach teachers all the time on instructional practices, but it seems kind of like superficial and not deep enough. And so I feel like helping leaders learn how to be instructional coaches as a part of what they do, it's really, really important because it prepares them to really succeed. And if you're lucky enough to have principals who are coaches with coaches, that's like the ideal scenario.
Yeah, that would be ideal. And Jim, it might be helpful for our listeners to hear the difference between leaders as instructional coaches and the coaching approach to leadership. Could you distinguish between those for us?
Yeah, that's great. So I would say coaching, as Sir John Whitmore said, is about unleashing the potential of other people. It's helping them achieve their things. You're not doing it to them. You're creating the conditions where they can unleash their potential. And so that can happen in all kinds of ways. The new book by Chris Monroe and John Campbell, Growth Talk, it's all about how do you have a coaching conversation when you've only got 5 or 10 minutes. And I think a coaching approach is one of the most important, if not the most important, leadership tactics, because just telling people what to do is not an evidence-based model for change. It could make things worse. But learning how to really lead as a coach, super powerful. But then instructional coaching is focusing in on helping teachers set specific teacher practice goals and learning student focused goals and then learning practices to get there. So that's a bit of a problem uh, to explain, because instruction, well, in North America, we would use it in the way we would talk about differentiated instruction or instructional rounds. It just refers to teaching, but other parts of the world, instruction is kind of a pejorative term. It means like training or drill instruction, those kind of things. So we have to break out of that and say, I'm taking the coaching approach to help teachers identify changes they want to see in their students, and then it helps them, and then help them hit that goal by identifying practices that work.
And we have this wonderful workshop, Introduction to Leadership Coaching, where we actually just wrapped up with our colleague Sonia Pullen, where we talk about the coaching approach. So if people are interested, they could even check out that offering as leaders, Introduction to Leadership Coaching. So Jim, how does this topic of leaders as instructional coaches relate back to what you've shared with us before on the podcast and in your workshops about the approaches to interaction?
I should say too, we're going to have a course on leaders as instructional coaches. So that's a option, or there's other things people can do. They could take, for example, the virtual institute if they wanted to go deep. That idea about different approaches, I think, is a really, really fundamentally important concept. It's in the New Leaders Guide to Coaching in Schools, which will be coming out sometime in the next 12 months. And the idea is that there are kind of three different approaches to interaction: facilitative, dialogical, directive. And most coaching is in the facilitative approach. The International Coaching Federation, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council that we have a certification process with, they're all about facilitative coaching. And with facilitative coaching, the person I'm coaching, they're the ones who are making the decisions. They're the ones who are making choices. And in order to help them, I set aside my ideas. I set aside my expertise. I ask questions. I listen. But if I was to share what I was going to do, it wouldn't really be helpful. It would just get in the way. So if I said to you, I need to clean out my garage this weekend, and you told me all about the time you cleaned out your garage, that probably wouldn't be that helpful. So you could set aside that and you could say, okay, well, let's walk through your goal. What's the steps you're going to follow? How are you going to make it work? And so that's facilitative coaching. I set aside my expertise. That works really well when I know how to clean a garage. So I don't need somebody else to tell me how to do it. I need somebody to help me set a goal and make a plan. But other times I don't have the expertise. And that's what we call a dialogical approach. When the person doesn't have expertise, I still see the person as the person making the decisions. They're still the ones making choices. And that's just the truth of the reality. I mean, people only do what they choose to do. They might do the bare minimum because they don't want to get fired, but people are really good at nodding their head yes and doing nothing. So the reality is people have choice, like it or not. And so the dialogical approach is acknowledging the fact that people have choice. And so I share ideas, but I share them as choices rather than as advice. So I'm not saying here's what you should do, but I could say, is it all right with you if I share a couple things I've seen other teachers do, and you tell me if any of these things sound like ones that you would like. There's always a choice involved in it. There's always a variety of options. And I don't even go there if the person already knows what to do. I only just bring those things up if they're struggling and there's some things I'd like to share. So we always say an instructional coach has expertise, but they don't act like experts. They act like partners. They really see the other person as an adult, a professional who makes decisions on their own. That's what professionals do. They use their discretion to make decisions. And the third thing is a telling conversation. And sometimes there has to be a telling conversation. So if there's one team member who's dominating the conversation or talking in negative ways, you may have to say to that person, this is not a choice. You have to stop doing that. It's damaging the effectiveness of everybody else on the team, or it's making people feel unsafe. Or if someone's coming to school just as way too late, and they're getting there just as the bell goes, and they should really be there about 45 minutes before, the principal goes to the teacher and says, look, you need to show up when your contract says you're supposed to show up. The principal's probably not going to be okay with the teacher saying, I don't think I want to do that. That's not a choice. So sometimes you have to have telling conversations, but it's probably not a learning conversation. And it might even engender a little bit of resentment when you tell the person what to do. If you want a learning conversation, trying to tell the person this is the practice you need to do is probably not going to be nearly as effective as saying, let me share some ideas and let's think together about what it might look like. Let's think together about the goal. Let's think together about the strategy. So what we're trying to do with this idea of courses on leaders as instructional coaches is helping leaders see that it's more effective to share ideas as a choice than it is to share it as what the person has to do. It's more effective to take the facilitative and dialogical approach to promote learning than it is to take the telling approach. And when you take the telling approach, you put yourself in the role of being a parent and you put the other person in the role of being a child. When you're talking to a professional, they don't really like being in the role of being a child, and rightfully so. It's just sometimes you have to do that.
So you're talking, Jim, about the more effective approaches being facilitative and dialogical. There are times when we have to have telling conversations, but in a lot of our workshops, managing challenging conversations, the institute, even better conversations, when we're talking about things like a coaching approach, oftentimes we have people unmute and say, it's just way too hard, or I don't think I can do it. So my question is, why might this coaching approach be challenging for our leaders?
Yeah, I want to say a little bit more about why I think it's so important first, and then talk about why it could be challenging. Only because I forgot to mention that in the previous question, which is that literally billions of dollars has been spent on programs to improve instruction and reading in particular. There was reading first. There's a program called America's Choice. There's some early UK literacy coaching initiatives, and they failed to have really make a dent on reading because they created prescriptive things to tell people what to do. And then teachers didn't want to be in a position of being one down, treated like children. We've scripted it all out. This is what you need. They wanted to be treated like professionals. And I don't think teachers are unskilled laborers. We don't want unskilled laborers teaching our kids. We want professionals. And so people sometimes think it's one or the other. Either I tell the teacher exactly what to do, or the teacher can choose whatever she wants and she can go on TikTok and try that. And what instructional coaching is saying is that they are both important. In fact, they're both essential. You need evidence-based teaching practices that work, that are ideally tailored to your particular setting. So you look at Brian Goodwin and John Hattie and all the people who talk about evidence-based instruction and the science of learning. You have a set of teaching practices, a playbook of evidence-based practices. But then you have an approach that honors the capacity of the teacher to think for themselves. So the teacher's the one who sets the goal. The teacher's the one who chooses the strategy. At the same time, you don't silence yourself in those conversations. But I would argue, unless you have both of those things, evidence-based practices and a deep respect for the professionalism of teachers, recognizing teachers as professionals who make their own decisions, you won't succeed. The reason why billions of dollars was wasted on things like reading first is because they didn't treat the teachers as professionals. Other things that don't draw on the evidence don't work. You need both those things. And that's what instructional coaching does, is it puts those two things together. It puts together evidence-based instructional practices and the teacher autonomy. So why is that a hard thing to do as a leader? Well, first off, people may have a hard time seeing you as a partner. The moment you become a leader, it's not this case for everybody, but it's frequently the case that people don't see you anymore. They see a stereotype of you. And for whatever reason, people have a tendency to want to criticize people who have more power within the organization. And so, and to some extent, they'll even externalize blame and responsibility and say, well, just tell me what to do. And then they'll complain about it afterwards. And so when people don't really see you and they see a stereotype of the boss, it's hard for them to see you as a partner. And you have to try to get around that. Edgar Schein says you have to try to equilibrate the conversation. There's also the danger in doing this thing that I'm talking about, leaders as instructional coaches, is that we could try to go even faster than what I'm talking about. And I'm nervous that it's maybe not intensive enough, that maybe there needs to be more to make it happen. That's why I think coaching is such a vital part of, they're the engine for change in schools. And so this isn't going to replace coaches. But if you have to do some kind of instructional coaching process, fast track coaching would do that. Another challenge, just to get you even more depressed, is that it's a steep learning curve. You can't, if your job is to improve outcomes in a school, have students more successful, more engaged, more learning more, it's not going to happen but without learning how to do it. You need to understand what effective instruction looks like and how to clearly articulate it, have a playbook, and you need to understand how to gather data. You need to understand the coaching process to follow, and you need to understand the coaching skills. It's not going to happen by chance. And there is a steep learning curve. And the trouble is administrators have a million other things. To become really good at instructional coaching it's a important but not urgent activity. And sometimes urgent activities keep us from actually getting to the most important things. You got a parent in your office for an hour talking about why there should be more organic food in the cafeteria. It's really hard to be thinking about, learning more about gathering data. And then it's kind of counterintuitive. We think to improve things, we need to tell people what to do. But actually what we're saying is holding back and offering choices, explaining things in a way that that allows the person to choose, as Michael Bungay Stanier made clear in The Advice Habit, is actually going to be more effective. Advice, people don't want it as much as we think, and our advice isn't as good as we think. But I still think it's the best practice. It's the best way to go, despite the fact you have a lot to learn, despite the fact it's counterintuitive, because telling people what to do is not an evidence-based model for change. You might have a great big plan. You might think this is awesome, but we're gonna tell people what to do and roll it out. It's just probably not going to work. There's ample evidence to show it's not going to work. So those are some of my thoughts about all of that.
Well, thank you, Jim. And I'm just thinking the leaders who are listening are probably feeling very seen because you named a lot of things that really resonate, like the fact that their plates are overflowing with many responsibilities, including school nutrition concerns from families. So I'm going to throw you a curveball, if that's okay. For the leaders who are listening,
Oh, here we go with the baseball analogies.
see, it's on my mind. This is energizing me. For the leaders who are listening, who really do want to prioritize coaching and maybe even fast track coaching once they learn more about that, what's one thing they could do or start doing or get closer to doing today to maybe make room for this in their schedule?
Well, I think there's a lot of things you could do. I think, but unfortunately, it isn't just one thing. It's like that thing in the Matrix where he puts this thing in his head and all these
So
ideas.
that,
Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great.
that.
But I think you need to start to learn about what instructional coaching is. I wish it was easier. We try to make it as simple as we can, easy and powerful. But um, so I would say, at the risk of sounding like we're promoting our stuff, but reading the book, The Definitive Guide to Instructional Coaching, um, maybe taking the virtual institute, that would be optimal, to take a 16-week, 3 hours a week to learn how to do this. If you're an instructional leader in a school, you probably need to know how to gather data. You probably need to know how to create an instructional playbook. You probably need to know the communication skills, leadership skills. So I don't really think there is just one thing to do, but okay, if you wanted to make it one thing, is to make a plan to really understand what it looks like, whether it's coming to the institute in Kansas, whether it's going to an institute in your neck of the woods, or getting professional development in your system, or taking the virtual courses. Um, I don't mean to make it difficult, but I think there's learning that has to happen. It's a whole new role. But there's the trouble with what happens in schools, and I wrote about this in an article this in the IC Toolkit, is people talk about things at the nominal level. They name it, they say we're doing coaching, but they're not doing coaching. They don't understand it. They don't have the depth of knowledge. Or they say we're doing PLCs, but they're not really doing PLCs. Or we're doing instructional rounds, but we're doing it our way, which is not the way it's supposed to be. And so if you really want, to me, it's almost the biggest issue in schools. We can't do things superficially and expect deep results. You know, we have to go the distance, do it well. And to do it well, it's going to take some kind of professional development. And then once you get going, though, you can create a process of continuous improvement where you're, recording your conversations with the permission of the person, and then you're analyzing your conversations, even record it on Otter, change the names to speaker one and speaker two, load it into your favorite AI thing, and have it analyze your conversation. You can learn a lot really quickly once you get going.
Well, thank you, Jim. So, number one is the Matrix plug.
Yeah.
If you don't have that available to you, another great first next step would be commit to learn about instructional coaching. And we would love to be your learning partner. We have a lot of workshops, and you can check out instructionalcoaching.com to see all of our offerings. So, Jim, those are things that leaders can do to get started and to be successful. But then there's this other question that I have is what might be some mistakes that leaders can make, especially in this world of instructional coaching?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, when you're the leader, you feel the urgency of the situation. You wake up in the night, you're thinking about your school. You're thinking about the kids in your school. You're driving home, you're thinking about it. And it kind of gnaws at you. You're really worried about, are we doing all we can do to make things work? It's a tough position. And then to not just tell the person what to do because you want to get rid of that gnawing feeling is really hard to do. But to adopt the "I'm just going to tell you what to do and you have to do it" kind of approach, then you have people sitting in meetings not talking. Then you have this sense of a person looking at you, and you just feel the vibe. They just don't want to really be in the conversation. And or they'll say, "Just tell me what to do and I'll do it." And there isn't that sense of two intelligent professionals working together. So I'd say the biggest mistake is mistaking telling conversations for partnership conversations. More often than not, if you want to have that lively energy, people have to feel safe, and they have to feel they can say what they think. And I think that's a key thing. Developing the skill of, and maybe that's one of those things that happens over time. You don't just snap your fingers overnight and all of a sudden do it, especially given the urgency, because you feel this pressure. Second thing I'd say is a big mistake is taking shortcuts. I'm just going to do a little chat GPT search on what instructional coaching is and try to do that. I don't think that's gonna work. I have to do the process in the way we're talking about, learning how to do, even if we do fast track instructional coaching, I need to learn how to do it and do it well. And another mistake would be to take shortcuts in your own professional learning. You have to do the work to learn how to do what you have to do. And lastly, I think a big mistake could be low expectations for teachers. The idea of what we're describing is that teachers will blow you away if you give them the opportunity. You put a group of teachers together, you give them some power over what they're doing and control, they'll do amazing things. As Dan Pink said when I interviewed him on this podcast a long time ago, He says, I can't think of anybody more motivated than teachers. He says, you go to Office Depot a month before the school year starts. Who's in there? Teachers spending their own money to buy stuff on their vacation so they can get ready for school. Teachers are motivated, but they're not motivated by demotivating systems. So creating a setting, and I think to blame teachers for them not being motivated is to misunderstand the power of systems and to misunderstand the power. Instead of blaming them for the problem, we should be asking ourselves, what am I doing that's creating those problems? I think those are all some big things.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anything else?
I'm sure there is. What about you? What do you think about that? What would be some mistakes you could see happening?
I continue to return to the complexities of helping when we talk on this podcast. And I think it's that change will happen really quickly, but that remembering that change takes time and that we need to give, back to Daniel Pink, teachers time to work toward mastery. So even as principals or leaders in schools commit to fast track coaching, whatever that might be, that mastery is a really important concept. So of course, agency and purpose too, as Daniel Pink says, but this idea that we do need to give our teachers time to work toward goals that are set for our students or even for teachers themselves. I think that we just really want change to happen really fast because we do stay up at night thinking, what can I do for my school, my students? And that responsibility makes us want things more quickly. So maybe just to remember that change takes time.
That's a good one.
Okay, Jim, one more question and then we'll head into our epilogue. And that is, what would it look like for leaders to coach?
So the impact cycle, it has these parts, and we're talking about instructional coaching here, leaders as instructional coaches, because you could still take the growth talk coaching approach would be teachers learn this, or leaders learn the communication skills, the way of being, and a coaching framework, what they call the growth framework. And then even in a 5-minute conversation, you can make a coaching conversation. I think that's the power of growth talk, which is going to be released at TLC. And so I'm excited to see the book out. I'll be talking to Chris and John about the book again soon. But I would say fast track coaching. It's 4 conversations, and the first conversation would be contracting. It's a brief conversation where you and the teacher get clear on what's going to happen, and you make a discussion about how much challenge they want, and it's very much about sort of aligning where the two of you are. And part of that is determining how the teacher is going to get a clear picture of reality. Is it going to be video? Is it going to be interviewing kids? What are we going to do as a way to get it? And there's, in the definitive guide, we've got like 5 or 6 different ways. Second conversation is about, now that you've got a clear picture of current reality, let's set a goal and identify a strategy. And so there's a set of questions we use, the identify questions, to take you there. You don't follow them the same way every time, but in that second conversation, at the end of the conversation, the teacher has a goal and they've identified a strategy. Now, ideally, your district has identified high impact teaching strategies that you think are going to be most relevant. They could be drawn from a number of different sources. But in this setting, these are the strategies we go to. Now, your strategy to help you hit your goal doesn't have to be drawn from that playbook, but it's very helpful to leaders and whoever's doing coaching to know these are generally our go-to practices. And then the third thing is the person gets ready to implement the strategy. So that means that the leader and the teacher get together and they either co-construct a checklist or they go through an already existing checklist about what it would look like. And then the teacher gets to see it. Now, when you do the impact cycle full on, in the more detailed and thorough way we would do it if we were an instructional coach, the coach might model, we might go watch another teacher together. I might model it without kids in the class. We might co-teach, but a leader's not going to have time for that. They're just not going to be able to do it. I mean, if they say I'm only going to work with 4 teachers, they could do a more thorough version. But so I would suggest leaders initially use artificial intelligence and say, look, can you identify a video of a math teacher in high school using high level questioning, or whatever it is the teacher's working on, whatever the strategy is, look for a video online. Check the video out beforehand to make sure it's actually good. And then give the teacher the chance to see that video. Now, of course, over time, if this coaching becomes a heart of the school, and it really, you could be having kids coaching each other, as Sonia Pullen just did up in Canada, or You could be looking at coaching parents and parents learning how to, I mean, coaching could be the center of what happens, but over time, it'd be great to have a library of exemplary practices from the teachers in your school. And you can say, hey, this is one of Jessica using learning maps and introducing the learning maps. You could watch that. That would show you. But I think that's that third conversation, the learning conversation, is where you're making sure the teacher understands it, you describe it, and they get a chance to see it. And it has to be done pretty efficiently. And then the fourth conversation is, now that you've tried it out, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and you start to talk about the changes you could make. Maybe we picked the wrong strategy, or we aren't teaching the strategy effectively. Maybe it's the wrong goal, or we need to change how we're going to measure progress towards the goal. And then after that, you have informal conversations. You're probably not going to be able to meet more than 4 times. You might even compress some of it, you know. You might even do the contracting more quickly, or keep it short. But after that, it's going to be, you know, maybe it's Marco Polo, you communicate that way, or through WhatsApp, or whatever system you might do, or maybe it's informal conversations, but you keep checking in with the person to see what's happening. Send them a text. How's it going? What's happening? And that's the idea. 4 conversations with a little bit of informal follow-up.
That's a really great idea. And it's called fast track coaching.
That's what it is, or maybe fast track impact cycle. The name is to be determined. We're still refining the name, but it's fast track something.
And for people who are listening who are interested in learning more about this, what can they do?
They should just email me, jim@instructionalcoaching.com, or I might not get back to them, but somebody will get back to them. And the course will be coming in the fall, like before Christmas for sure.
Wonderful.
After Nepal, so probably in December, probably in the winter.
When you're back from your hike and you are just on top of the world and you have stories to tell about this successful hike through Nepal, then you're going to deliver leaders as instructional coaches.
Yeah. Unless it kills me, in which case you can deliver the course. But anyway, yeah.
Jim, you'll be delivering that course. I believe you're going to make it out of there and you'll be so much stronger for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but that's the idea. And but in the meantime, you can't wait. If you're like, that's what I want to do, you could take any number of different courses we've got, but probably either coming to the institute that we do in Kansas, or doing. And I don't mean to be publicizing it. I just think this is the way it works. You know, is you have to learn how to do it. The virtual institute would be a good way to do it too. They could learn how to do that, and they would have to take essentially the training we're going to do is really combining what's already in the virtual institute. That's what's happening, but doing it from a principal perspective.
Wonderful. I can't wait to learn about it. Okay, Jim. So to close out our show today, I have 2 final questions.
Good.
And my first one starts with a word from Dr. Moon's book. You know, I'm really into this book, Coaching A to Z, and
Well
her
done.
thank you. Her word for S was suppose. So it inspired me to create this question. Suppose every leader heard this message, this podcast episode. What one thing might they start doing tomorrow?
I think they should read the definitive guide to instructional coaching. I think they need to find some way, or maybe just poke around and look for some presentations I've done online, podcasts for other people, where we talk about the 7 success factors. I think if you typed in Jim Knight 7 success factors, that would be a good place to start. But the definitive guide is designed to be a pretty easy read. It's meant to be a concise book. It's only 60,000 words instead of 85,000 words. So I'd say, I'm not trying to sell the book, but I don't know how you can do it without knowing those ideas. So that would be it for me, to figure out, let's put it this way. What are the 7 success factors for coaching, and learning what they are and thinking about how can I make that happen? That would be my next step if I was that person.
Wonderful. Okay, Jim, second question. What
Good.
would you say is the overarching message you're hoping to communicate to leaders today?
2 things. One, I think we need to stop pretending change has happened when it hasn't happened. And so, if there's no change in what's happening with kids, and that change isn't being sustained, our professional learning isn't working. And so if you really want to have professional learning that works, you've got to see a difference in kids. And the impact cycle builds that in. We set a goal, a student-focused goal, and we document progress towards that goal so we can show that it worked or it didn't work. It didn't work if there's no change in kids. I don't care what the teacher does. I don't care if he does every little thing on every checklist about what they're supposed to do. If the kids aren't changing, it isn't working. That's the way I would put it. Let's stop pretending things have worked when they haven't worked. And then I'd say the second thing is the idea that those two things are critical to make it work. You need evidence-based practices. You need to know what effective instruction looks like. And you need to share it in a way that recognizes teachers as professionals, which means they have a lot of autonomy. And one without the other doesn't work. You've got teachers who are picking their teaching practices from TikTok. It's probably not going to be that effective. Or they're just kind of guessing. It's going to be inefficient, maybe frustrating. And if you try to bully through these practices, everybody has to do exactly what I tell them, you probably encounter resistance. It's probably not going to work. But the two, professionalism of teachers, evidence-based practices, combined, that's what instructional coaching is when it's done well. It puts those two things together.
Thank you, Jim. Anything else?
I want to hear what you think about all this. What are your thoughts about it? What do you really think about all this, Doctor? What's kind of new to you? So what do you think?
Well, this fast track impact cycle, fast track coaching, whichever one it ends up being, is a new idea. But I think it's profound in the sense that leaders and coaches can team up and start making more change across their schools. But also, what you say about theoretical alignment is we're really making sure there's widespread understanding of instructional coaching. And one of the things you talk about in chapter 7 of the definitive guide is that leaders go first, they walk the talk. And this is an excellent way for you to build a learning architecture, a learning system, a culture of learning, a culture of coaching in your school. And that's something I heard often as an instructional coach in Georgia is, well, how can we change the culture or how can we positively impact the cultures? This is how you do it right here is by ensuring that everyone understands the role of a coach and that begins with the leader.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I think that's a real great way to put it.
I also think that your TLC keynote, collecting stories, this is your profound era to live in the Taylor Swift world for a moment because you were making such profound
Taylor,
statements.
who? What's this person?
I think she likes Kansas. Have you heard of this
Yeah.
place?
Oh, that's the one that likes Lawrence so much. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she knows this football
She's
guy.
going out with that football player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think they just got engaged. So she
They
the
may be here tomorrow in Lawrence game.
oh, okay.
Cincinnati is playing, and Travis used to play for Cincinnati. So the stadium sold out like overnight because people are like, there's the off chance
Oh,
that
they
Taylor
may.
Swift will be at the game, and so the stadium sold out. Sorry for that little distraction,
So
but
is that why you're going to Nebraska tomorrow?
well, I'm going to Nebraska to see Luke and Jenny. I've
Of
missed them a
course.
lot. I've been away for a long time. I'm not avoiding Taylor. I'm doing it.
Okay. But anyway, you're dropping a lot of really profound statements, and I love that statement. Let's stop pretending that it's working. It's just so profound, and I think that it will really sit well with leaders who want to do what's right for kids. So thank you for all the messages you've shared today.
Well, we are a B Corp. We are a business that's dedicated to doing to a benefit to society. We're certified as that's what we do. And that is the issue. How can we have the most positive impact on kids? And so everything's filtered through that north point on our compass. And I feel leaders are in the same boat. They're their whole thing that drives them. Of course, there's it's hard to separate, self-interest from these kind of things. You look good if your school is doing well, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think to do good, you should feel good, you know. But I think they have the same goals. It's just that if you don't have a pathway, it's hard to find hope, and it's there's so many things that make it difficult. But learning this simple process, the impact cycle, and how to use it, and along with that, identifying effective practices and identifying data you can use to set goals, monitor progress, see reality more clearly. The things we do in the 7 success factors. If there was something better, I'd be all for it, And I want to say too, resist the temptation to go for a quick fix. If there isn't, if you in your gut, if you feel this thing that I'm being sold isn't really going to make a change for kids, if in your heart of hearts you say, I don't know that that'll make a difference for kids, then don't invest your time in it. Focus on what's going to change things for kids. I think that's the key thing.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jim. Anything else before we wrap up?
Just great to work with you. Thank you.
As always, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening today. If you found today's episode helpful, it would help us if you liked or followed the podcast. You can also leave us a rating or a comment so we can continue creating meaningful content just for you. Thank you. And until next time, go forth and lead great coaching conversations. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jessica.